Midnight Suns broke onto the mainstream in 2022, taking Marvel fans by surprise. Not only was the group painfully obscure, but the characters featured were not MCU favorites. Who? And although the game wasn't a commercial hit, reviews were fairly high for the tactical role-playing game. And this was great because nobody wants to relive another one of these. No! Look, the Midnight Suns game was fantastic, and Marvel fans should be very excited, because the mystical realm of the MCU is primed for exploration, and us Marvel fans are ready for what the future has in store. Welcome to A Marvelous Life. I'm Nashology, and today we are diving into a fascinating prospect: the potential introduction of the Midnight Suns into the MCU. But let's start with the obvious question: who are the Midnight Suns? Featuring a diverse cast of Marvel's supernatural characters, the Midnight Suns are a magical-themed team that specializes in the mystical and paranormal. First forming back in the early 90s, the Midnight Suns banded together to stop the rise of Lilith, the mother of all demons. With supernatural heroes such as Morbius, the Ghost Riders, and Blade, the identity of the team was quickly solidified. An exciting team, to be sure, but one that hasn't found mainstream success. But the MCU is changing, and the supernatural world that has been pretty locked away is now beginning to find the light of day. The Midnight Suns may be coming to a movie theater near you. So if that's the case, it's best to be prepared. The MCU is no stranger to oddities. We've seen our fair share of monsters, aliens, eyeball things, and even zombies. But there's one facet of the growing universe that has failed to capture our attention: magic. Sure, the Doctor Strange movies were awe-inspiring, and whether you felt Multiverse of Madness lived up to its expectations or not, you can't deny the spectacle of the mystical arts on full display. I love the Infinity Saga as much as the next person, and I'm all for diving into the branching realities that comprise the multiverse. But the MCU needs a deeper dive into the world of dark magic and otherworldly threats, and thankfully, this seems to be on the menu. Since we've said our farewell to Captain America and Iron Man, it's safe to say the MCU has never quite been the same.
Oh, no.
Let's take a little stroll down memory lane, shall we? Black Widow, a high-octane espionage thriller that seemed to divide audiences with its Jason Bourne-esque action. Eternals, lambasted for its pacing and screenplay, and quite the step down for director Chloe Zhao. Multiverse of Madness, which, although I personally loved, seemed to divide fans further, particularly through a lack of an actual emphasis on the multiverse and a larger spotlight on Wanda's grief. Thor: Love and Thunder, which, never mind, let's skip this one. And don't forget the myriad of TV shows that have ranged from awesome to, well, could be better. Let's face it, we need a change and we need it now. Unlike the science and technology that have been at the forefront of the MCU, Magik introduces a whole new dimension of storytelling. It's unpredictable, ancient, and bound by its own set of rules, which can add layers of complexity and intrigue. And most importantly, it can give us a break from the endless onslaught of dad jokes and never-ending humor. Sorry, Taika, there's no room for you here. Diving into the mystical realm allows for richer, darker, and more mature storylines to flourish within the MCU. Imagine the rich lore, mythical creatures, and the ancient spells that could be brought to life on the big screen. This shift could redefine what we expect from superhero films and keep the MCU at the cutting edge of entertainment. I truly believe that exploring the mystical side of the MCU could open up endless possibilities and endless new characters, which brings us to the fun part of this video. Thankfully, with the Midnight Suns movie comes an endless possibility of awesome Marvel characters to fill the roster, especially considering the existing alumni from the comics. And before you say anything, I know, the MCU is littered with half-assed characters that could have remained on the sidelines. Characters that have been dumped on us a little too fast. But don't worry. There are a lot of amazing mystical characters in the Marvel U, ones that could easily become fan favorites. Let's have a look. To anchor the new team, we need a fan favorite. Someone who can not only fill theater seats, but also use his mastery of the mystic arts and experience with otherworldly threats to become a natural leader for this team. There's no one more suitable than Doctor Strange. Let's be real here. His extensive knowledge of magical lore makes him an invaluable asset when dealing with supernatural threats. His strategic mind and experience in leading mystical battles position him as a natural leader for the Midnight Suns. From a leadership perspective, Doctor Strange's journey from a self-centered surgeon to a selfless protector of the multiverse demonstrates his growth and ability to inspire others. And come on, there's no one else in the MCU that can provide us with this type of action. With Benedict Cumberbatch's charismatic portrayal, Strange has become a beloved figure in the MCU. His presence in a Midnight Suns film would undoubtedly draw in audiences who are eager to see the wizard himself engaged in a dark, mature storyline. That is, hopefully the opposite of what we got in Thor: Love and Thunder.
Eat my hammer!
The next best addition would be someone you may not be familiar with, unless you watched the 2020 New Mutants film, which, according to basically everywhere, you all pretty much hated. For everyone else, I introduce you to Illyana Rasputin, also known as Magik. Illyana is the younger sister of Colossus, a long-standing member of the X-Men. She was kidnapped as a child and taken to the demonic dimension of Limbo, where she was raised by the sorcerer Belasco. This is where she learned her mastery over magic. Her time in Limbo significantly shaped her character, giving her a complex and often tragic backstory. She has struggled with the darkness within her, constantly battling to balance her humanity with the demonic influences she absorbed. Magik's aggressive and standoffish personality sets her apart from many of the other female characters in the MCU. She is often portrayed as fierce, uncompromising, and not afraid to take extreme measures to achieve her goals. It's a refreshing change and adds a layer of grit and realism that the audience will come to both fear and admire. Essentially, Magik is one of the most badass female characters in the entire Marvel U, and with her powers brought to life, she will surely be a fan favorite. Her soul sword is incredibly stunning, and is basically the magical manifestation of her own life force. On top of that, she has the mutant ability to teleport, which would add a dynamic and visually captivating element to action scenes. Other than that, she's pretty much a warlock from World of Warcraft. A perfect representation of the Midnight Suns.
He's right, it's Magik.
So am I.
Next up is a brand new character in the MCU, but one that'll be a perfect fit for the team. Jack Russell, also known as Werewolf by Night. This is a character who hasn't experienced the spotlight in many years, first appearing in the comics back in 1972, and then essentially falling off into obscurity in the modern age. But make no mistake, Jack Russell is a perfect addition to the Midnight Suns franchise, as he's a man burdened with a hideous duality, a lycanthropic curse hidden beneath a seemingly calm and controlled humanity. The Midnight Suns franchise would give Jack Russell both purpose and direction. Remember, Jack has been living with this curse for decades, and probably has as much of an understanding of the mystical world as Doctor Strange. His maturity and seasoned perspective would help ground the team, providing a stabilizing influence amid the chaos of their missions. Jack's presence would add a horror element to the team, emphasizing the darker, more terrifying aspects of the supernatural world. He's a man you're rooting for, regardless of who's in the driver's seat. And hey, if we're lucky, maybe we'll get a visit from his old buddy, Ted. Alright, this is probably an obvious choice, but come on. What a perfect excuse to throw Moon Knight back into the limelight. Moon Knight's backstory is steeped in mysticism and supernatural elements. As an avatar of the Egyptian moon god Khonshu, Mark Spector's abilities and powers are granted through divine magic, tying him directly to the mystical themes central to the Midnight Suns. It would be a good excuse to throw Mark Spector into a big-budget MCU film, but let's make sure they actually give Moon Knight a budget this time. Watching Mark contend with his dissociative identity disorder would provide a rich, complex narrative that would balance nicely with the dual nature exhibited by Jack Russell. Moon Knight is a fan-favorite character, and for good reason. He's dark, gritty, and chaotic in nature. He's an unpredictable powerhouse with a penchant for getting his hands dirty. But obviously, we need to sell a film here. Oscar Isaac's portrayal of Moon Knight has garnered significant acclaim. His popularity would undoubtedly contribute to the film's success. He's one hell of an actor who will lend credibility and star power to the film. I shouldn't have to sell the addition of Moon Knight here. He'll fit into the Midnight Suns just fine. Next up is also an obvious contender. In fact, I'll go as far as the Midnight Suns cannot exist without him. The one and only Blade. Ushered recently into the MCU, Mahershala Ali is our very own version of the Dampier, although we'll never forget the OG. And speaking of OG, Blade is one of the founders of the Midnight Suns, alongside other heroes such as Morbius, Danny Ketch, Frank Drake, and Hannibal King, who none of you probably know. But you do know Blade, and what he brings to the table is absolutely crucial for a full-functioning Midnight Suns roster. And since his last appearance was in Blade 2, way back in 2002, younger audiences have no idea the level of badassery that awaits them. Blade operates in the shadows, opposing supernatural threats that ordinary heroes might overlook. His expertise in dealing with the undead and other mystical creatures makes him an invaluable asset in a team focused on the darker, magical side of the Marvel Universe. Everything about Blade screams Midnight Suns, and the property is the perfect vehicle for Blade's growing presence within the MCU. And with the excitement surrounding Mahershala Ali's portrayal of the Bloodsucker, the seats of your local theater are sure to fill up fast. For the final spot on the main roster, Elsa Bloodstone would be a perfect choice for the Midnight Suns. In the comics, Elsa Bloodstone is a fierce monster hunter, the daughter of the legendary Ulysses Bloodstone. She inherits her father's enhanced strength, speed, and longevity due to the Bloodstone gem she wears around her neck. In the Werewolf by Night MCU special, Elsa Bloodstone is portrayed as a seasoned monster hunter estranged from her family, particularly from her father's legacy and the Bloodstone relic. She does retain her no-nonsense attitude and in many ways looks and acts a lot like Jessica Jones.
Like sisters. We're like twins.
Unlike many of the supernatural heroes on the team, Elsa is just a human.
Only human.
This adds a relatable, grounded element to the team, making her a bridge between the audience and the more fantastical elements of the story. Her expertise in monster hunting and her practical, hands-on approach to dealing with threats would provide a unique dynamic within the team. Oh, and watching her bitchy attitude clash with Magik's bitchy attitude would be quite the sight. And considering Marvel's latest foray into strong, independent women taking over the MCU, Elsa Bloodstone's inclusion will fit the bill just fine. Now, for the film to be a success, we need to ensure a good story, something that ties back to previous MCU excursions while also pushing the universe forward in a new direction. For starters, let me put this out there. No more Wanda Maximoff, please. The possibility of a redemption arc is in play, and it's likely that a big chunk of the audience will want to see her atone for her sins. But this really is a horrible idea. Wanda's fall from hero to psychopathic murderer is an interesting take on the character, and gives the audience proof that absolute power can come with absolute corruption. It's a cautionary tale that should be left as such. However, I do think the film should contain the Darkhold, as there's lots of opportunities present with this choice. Perhaps Wanda destroyed the Darkhold in every universe except one, and now there's a mad race to track it down. I take inspiration from the 2018 Venom saga by Donny Cates, where an evil cult begins hunting for pieces of symbiote left behind in former hosts in order to summon the eldritch god Null back to Earth. Using this inspiration, a cult of Darkhold users may be scouring the Earth to find the last Darkhold, a cult that may have begun during the Salem witch trials, connecting back to the origin of Agatha and her upcoming TV show. The result, the re-emergence of Dormammu, who has been hiding within the Dark Dimension since the first Doctor Strange film. Or maybe someone more sinister, such as Lilith or Mephisto. But more importantly, the film would have to utilize the unique backgrounds of each Midnight Suns character. Blade could enter the fray because although seemingly extinct for decades, the vampire curse is starting to re-emerge, suggesting that whoever is in control of the last remaining Darkhold is beginning to use its powers. A vampire curse whose origin hails from the hellish dimension of Limbo, a place all too familiar to Magik. Finally, it could be revealed that the Bloodstone from the Werewolf by Night special is the key to destroying the Darkhold for good, the only means of truly destroying magical creatures and artifacts. By continuing the storyline from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and focusing on the Darkhold's menace, the film ties into the broader MCU narrative while carving out its unique niche in the realm of dark magic and supernatural heroism. It's a way to keep the MCU fresh and exciting while rewarding those who have gone on the 10+ year journey of the MCU.
I am Iron Man.
There's a lot of interesting routes this franchise could take, and with proper writers on board, the MCU could feature its first breath of fresh air in a while. The Midnight Suns, although fairly obscure in the comic book world, has great potential for the big screen. And with a compelling story centered around the re-emergence of the Darkhold and a powerful ensemble cast, the possibilities are endless. After over 10 years of Marvel films, it's time to push the boundaries of what we've come to expect from the MCU. And that includes darker, more mature storylines that also caters to the adults that have grown up with Marvel. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more Marvel content. And let me know in the comment section below what you think of a possible Midnight Suns film. Until next time, I'm Nashology, and this is A Marvelous Life.